All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Legitimate Cybersecurity Podcast. Today, we have lucked out really, really well. We have a special guest with us, Micah Heaton, who has graciously agreed to be our first guest.
After much begging, we had
Yeah.
to beg. But
Dustin and I have worked with Micah for several years now. He's always a joy whenever we have meetings with him. At least that's when I see you on the calendar invite, I get excited. And so thank you for joining. A little bit background on Micah. Um, we've got Micah specifically. He's the executive director of product and innovation strategy with us here at BlueVoyant, where we work. And in 2025, he became and was, I don't know what the process is. Is there a secret voting that Microsoft does to make you the Microsoft Security Changemaker?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
So Micah is the Microsoft Security Changemaker for 2025, which is a big deal in our circle in cyber. His career has been all about bridging the gap between complex security tools and practical outcomes. He's led frontline efforts to modernize security operations, reduce friction, and help organizations make smarter, faster decisions, all while keeping real-world constraints in mind. Read pragmatism with that one. If you've worked in this field long enough, you realize there's the ideal cybersecurity that's perfect for everyone, but it's always got to be a pragmatic implementation. So it's really great that he shares that perspective. I know Dustin and I have that as well. Whether it's streamlining SOC workflows, shaping strategy around AI, or guiding teams through transformation, Micah brings a practitioner's mindset and a mentor's heart. Known for advocating for the quiet defenders, quote unquote, the people doing the hard work without fanfare, Micah is as much about community and clarity as he is about capability. In today's conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about SHOP and what are the things that kind of make him advocate for those quiet defenders. Because personally, I think that's a big deal, and it's something that not enough people do. We're going to be packed with a lot of insight, but it's going to be coupled with a lot of grounded wisdom since we have Micah here. And, both he and Dustin will probably keep me chained to the ground, which is great. So anyway, welcome, Micah. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
I want to double down on that quiet defenders element real quick. One of the questions that Dustin and I were talking about before the show was, it's pretty rare to see someone first notice those individuals, but then to kind of work hard for them. I saw a lot of it at NSA because everyone in there is quiet, right? But especially there's just a lot of introverts in the field in general who come in, get down to work, go home day in, day out. From your perspective, being an advocate for them, what does that mean to you? And how should leadership better support these individuals who are in the trenches every day? And also, I'd love to know if you can give us some context, when was the moment you realized, hold on, these people need an advocate? What did that look like? And do you remember that?
Well, first of all, guys, thank you so much for letting me hang with you. I appreciate that. I think the world of both of you, just tremendous humans, up and down for sure.
The money's in the mail, the bribe's on the way.
And I have some more of those. I'll pepper them throughout. But thank you for such a gracious introduction. Really appreciate that. I think that everybody has that it factor. I really do. I just don't think they know that they do. And there could be any number of reasons why they don't feel that or why they don't know it. It could have been some part of their upbringing, some aspect of school that, they felt beat them down, whether it was through grade school or college. And then just like kind of managing yourself in a corporate environment tends to be some kind of strange mix of like, do I pop my head up? Do I keep my head down? I think I could solve that problem, but maybe that's not my lane. And I think that's even amplified now more and more, where our professional lives in some ways are fairly public. We see rifts happen in like thousands, of folks at some of the big hyperscalers just gone, right? And so it's because that's so public, and there's like, you're not just managing your professional life internally at where you work, you're starting to manage your persona, your brand outwardly as well. And to be completely honest with you, like I might have a little bit of a gift for gab, maybe good at kind of connecting folks, but there's something about like just answering your question about like, when did I start to clue into this like quiet versus loud part? I got a little bit concerned about social media many years ago, and like some of the fighting that I saw online. I saw people kind of getting after each other, and otherwise normally do that. It's almost like when you're driving on the road, and I do this. I'm like, I can't believe that. I'm going to yell at that person on the road. It turns out that's my neighbor or my friend. And I'm like, oh, wait. That was not okay for me. Right. And I just think that because of that experience with social media really early, I saw a little bit of like a Black Mirror episode unfolding in my life where I'm like, okay, maybe I don't need to open my mouth all the time. Maybe I don't need to run my mouth and give everybody my opinion. But I think over the years, especially with kids, Frank, I've started to realize that like I don't need to have an opinion on everything, but I do need to leave some breadcrumbs for them. And maybe that looks like highlighting in the public sphere, on LinkedIn, in blogs, in webinars, in podcasts, and being an advocate for folks who don't necessarily have the spotlight or know that, they could yearn for it. And I'll put a bow on that, preamble to our discussion today by just saying the Microsoft Changemaker Award was pretty interesting because it's a fairly rigorous nomination process. They have hundreds of security partners that are in that ecosystem, and they get hundreds of nominations that come in, and they have a judging panel that goes through those nominations and they pick 5 people. And the field this year was stacked. We're talking CEOs, we're talking VPs, we're talking people who are just industry juggernauts that are connected to tens of thousands of people online. And then there was me. I was the standout.
You were the underdog.
100%, in my opinion, was the underdog. And once you go through that final nomination process, then there is a voting process. And so everyone at Microsoft and the MSSPs and the partner security community and the ISVs all get to vote. And I think it was in that moment, Frank, it was like, okay, wait a second. Like, people are okay with me speaking up. Like, it's good to have a voice. And if I have an opportunity to use that, you guys know I do a lot of presentations and things, but if I can use this as a bit of a groundswell to bring the spotlight to folks who haven't historically had it, I'm calling them the quiet defenders, then I will, because they solve all the problems, they do all the work, they keep a steady hand on the launch button, so to speak, and they deserve more from all of us who have had the privilege of, speaking out.
I think that's really awesome. There's 2 parts that I kind of want to follow up on there. But the main part I'm interested in there is you brought up something that I think Dustin and I have experienced throughout the entirety of our career, something that can set people apart. It's a very weird, how do I put this, career field, in that you have a lot of things that you have to tackle technically from a comprehension element, right? I mean, cybersecurity is not just something anyone can roll in and understand. And it requires, and some of it's really boring. A lot of it's really boring, right? So you have to have persistence, tenacity, and you have to have the ability to understand it. And I think what's interesting there is a lot of the people who can do that, then you're I don't know if it's left or right side of the brain, right? But then the part for communication isn't necessarily always there to communicate the findings, communicate it. So when you bring up the gift of the gab, which is a long preface to that, how important do you think it is? Because I found specifically that almost as important as performing cybersecurity well and making the findings and protecting organizations is the ability to communicate the findings effectively and the ability to communicate the discoveries to the right people effectively. So what are your thoughts around that kind of capability? How rare is it? And what recommendation do you have for people in the field in order to get better at it?
I love this question because I'm going to give you an answer, and then some things are going to click about me that there's some pieces are going to come together for you guys. When I was in high school, I was in high school debates. I did something called policy debate and Lincoln Douglas debate, and those are you've heard about like debate club. It's like that, but you actually like model UN. You don the persona of a congressperson, and you're defending legislation, and you do it all year. You pick a defensive piece for some theoretical legislation that you support, and then you build a case study for that. And so even the shyest, most, like some of the best troubleshooters, best problem solvers, but are pretty shy about advocating for themselves, they're put in a position where they have to speak and articulate. And there's multiple parts to an argument. You've got like a claim, you've got a warrant, and you've got an impact. And you learn all about logic and developing an argument with all of those complete parts and then defending it. in an open
Right.
environment. So I did that in high school. I did that in university. And then I taught summer courses at university doing the same thing. So people don't realize this, but like debate's not a public, it's not like a spectator sport. So you don't necessarily see it.
Well, unless you're in politics,
I was
right?
about to say, yeah, for some it is.
I've spent the last day watching two people debate through Twitter.
Oh, I know, man.
Something.
And I occasionally feel like those chaps could use a little bit of media training. But I'm like
A smidge.
complete like we're missing a complete argument, boys. Like we don't have the claim, the word, and impact. I'm getting a lot of claims. Like where's the rest? Where's the rest of it? So for me, that was a tremendous experience because it allowed me to both be a student and teacher in the idea of forensics, not as we know it, but like forensics in kind of like ancient Greek terms, which is just this study of argument. And I feel very grateful for that. And it just made me realize that anybody can be a public speaker. They just got to kind of unlock some of those pieces to form a complete argument, depending on what, the public speaking is. But man, when you're trying to solve problems internally at an organization, or you're trying to listen to a prospect or a customer who's potentially like really frustrated, which you guys do on a regular basis.
Oh yeah.
Biggest thing I learned in debate is when to concede an argument, because you're not going to get them all. You're not going to win every point. You got to let one go. And the currency you get with the frustrated customer or prospect or somebody internally who maybe isn't your biggest fan, the currency you get when you artfully, tactfully let one of those go. And I promise you, you don't have a winning position on every point anyway. So like you need to decide which one you're gonna let go. So
is there a secret threshold, Micah, that you kind of have in your head for when something like that happens, or is it just kind of customer by customer basis or person by person basis?
100% secret threshold. My grandma always used to say, and I'm seeing this quote like pop up more and more. People don't remember very often what you say. They remember the way that you made them feel. And if I'm going to lose currency with someone because the way I made them feel 2 weeks later, maybe forgot the little argument, but they're like, man, I just don't like, there's something about that. Got a bad taste in my mouth. So like, maybe if I need help, I'm not going back to that guy. It's like that threshold is, am I going to cost myself a relationship now and down the road with somebody that could be a tremendous ally because I need to be, the smartest person in the room? That really is a guiding principle, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I really like that because I think there is a prevailing thought right now. I guess not just in. I don't know how reflected it is in cyber. You see it from time to time, but I feel like it's a growing sentiment. The running, mentality in a lot of instances is a lot of people just want to feel good, right? They just want to be happy. Whereas more often, I think people will say that, but what they really want is they want to feel right, and they'll sacrifice feeling happy and feeling, comfortable throughout the day for feeling right. They will be miserable if they think they are right. And then what I'm seeing more now, which is getting really concerning, is it's not enough that I am right, but you must be wrong too, and you need to know it. So it's this mentality that's growing that I really kind of like the way you're looking at it, because you're actively combating that. Because logically, no one's right all the time. I mean, no one can be right all the time. So the ability to keep on target and remember the priorities, right, of how do I want to interact with this person moving forward in the future? How do I want to work with them? I can see how that is a really valuable skill set, especially, in a field like cyber where, it's a small world by and large.
Yeah. And with that, Micah, so, and I think what we're all kind of talking about is we all work in literally a binary field where literally everything can be broken down to truth or false, or right or wrong, or 1 or 0, right? Yeah. At least from the mentality of a lot of technical folks. So, they see something and they say, here's the solution, right? And this is the solution. And, you might have a business leader who's like, you can't use that because of A, B, or C, right? And it's like, well, but that's a solution that will fix the problem, right? So, Micah, from your perspective, do you have words of advice for, people who kind of do have that binary thinking or are in that technical stance and are like, no, this is the solution. It's the right one. And it's the one we should go with. Is there some kind of, and I guess I'm going to keep using this term with you as secret sauce. Is there some kind of, advice you can give someone like that? Or, what would you tell them about, how you can kind of maneuver around, two people we both think they're right. One who has the money, who probably is the right one, right?
Oh man, that's a whole can of worms right there.
Sorry. But putting that aside, speaking directly to kind of a technical crowd and to a group of cybersecurity folks who have a solution and who think something is right. Like how, I know it's a loaded question. I know it's a lot, but I've seen you in this. You are the master at it. So.
Right.
What's the secret?
Tell us now. Give us the secret.
Because you guys might not know this, but I happen to look up to both of you, so it's very kind of you to say that. It is always interesting to hear that from people who that I look up to. So that is pretty cool. Binary doesn't necessarily have to mean tribalism, and I think that's the trick to it. Is we end up being, fanboys and gals of specific technology or, specific heroes of ours, whether it's in our company or people that were our mentors. And so just naturally humans are tribalistic from, our hunter-gatherer days. It kind of happens. But I think the trick of the right and wrong thing is to not be too married to your opinion on it. So like, I'll go back to debate, for instance. It's actually sometimes really hard for me to be like politically and socially and economically aligned to one position because I have all of this training thinking about the other side of a thing. And so sometimes like my mind kind of runs away with me with that devil's advocacy. It's like if you're in pursuit of capital T truth, you have synthesis, you have antithesis, you've got your thesis, your antithesis, and then you have synthesis. It's like you're not going to get to that capital T truth with just your perspective, just your tribalism. You do actually need the other side, and that's actually what forms the complete argument, the complete thought. And so it always blows me away. I love what you said, Dustin, which is we're in an industry that is, if we do not get to the truth, we aren't doing our job. Is that a false positive?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a false? Is that is that true or false? Do we have actual compromise in an environment? Is somebody producing persistent risk? Is the answer yes or no? We need to, as definitively as possible, answer that. You get all of us outside of our, like the cybersecurity mode we operate in, where you do have to do that. That is our job, and we know that's our job, and so we don't deviate from that. Second, we start talking politics or something we saw in the news. Suddenly, like all that training goes away, and we're like, no, it's the. I'm like, what just happened? Like, you work in an industry where you know better than to just default to that sort of like, I know this in my heart. But it is interesting how easy it is for all of us to do that. But I think just try to be an example that does not motivate that tribalism as much as possible, and I think people will catch on.
Yeah, I like that. Yep,
I like that a lot too. It's something that I think is a bit more needed, not just in the field, but in general. Having that perspective, the idea of postmodernism and what is truth and is there truth and whatnot. Well, we do still work, as Dustin pointed out, in one of the fields that does have yes or no answers on certain things, right? So being able to blend that with the social aspect and the what is it? We'll say EQ of engaging with that is valuable. Okay, I've got another question. Making a bit of a hard shift here.
I love it.
Yeah, no, because I really have enjoyed your perspective when we've been talking about AI introduction, right? And AI, where does AI fit? Because I feel like not just in our industry, but in all industries, but a lot in our industry, right? And maybe it's because it's more technical. There's been this greater push to figure out, it's almost like they're trying to treat it like peanut butter. Just slather AI on everything, right? Where everyone's like, well, try it with peanut butter, chocolate and peanut butter, stuff. Who would have thought? Who would have known that peanut butter makes celery edible, for example, right? Peanut butter and a few raisins with entomolog, right? But that doesn't mean you want to put peanut butter on everything, right? You don't put it on steak. It'd be terrible on tuna. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, Dustin, these are bad examples because you're a straight chef. So I'm sorry if I'm insulting your chef abilities or your chef.
The peanut butter on steak thing, actually, there is a process for doing that. Yeah. But yeah, peanut butter on tuna, I'm not sure. Although there is Thai cooking, Thai cuisine uses a lot of peanuts in their cooking.
Oh, and it's so good too. See?
Sorry, right. I don't mean to ruin.
No, I love it. No, hey,
stop. I digress now.
I'm not the professional. I mean, I'm a professional taster, and I'm not a professional taster. There's actually professional tasters out there. Anyway, unpaid food critic and creator. Back to AI though. I feel like similar to like peanut butter and stuff like that, people are trying to just shove AI into every conversation, shove it on everything else everywhere. With AI tools like Copilot becoming part of the security toolkit, whether we like it or not, right? How do you separate and identify the real operational value of this capability and these capabilities from the actual marketing hype of like, it's transformative, put it on everything kind of thing, right? Like, where do you draw that line and how do you identify that?
Do you guys remember MSN Instant Messenger, MSNIM, and AIM?
Yep.
AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm so nostalgic for those days, boys. For real.
I do miss it from time to time.
Especially the old look. If I hear that, if I hear someone had a text notification sound that was the old Creak AOL. Open door from AOL, yeah. And I was like, oh, you just threw me back there.
Yeah. There's something very special about like the internet in the 90s where we moved out of like kind of the private sector application part of like DARPA, right? And we moved into like everybody can be online. It was the Wild West. There were all sorts of things. So there used to be these add-ons. They were called PROGs, PROGZ for MSNIM, where you could put in these little like trinkets that let people see what you were listening to, and like one line ASCII art was all the jam. Like you sign in, you're like, how'd you do that? Show me how to do that. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you could do is build a chat bot in MSNIM that would like let you pretend to be online, and then people would ask it questions thinking it was you, and you would respond. It was pretty rough, but it was just conditional. It was like,
I can't imagine why.
It's fuzzy logic, right? It was conditional. It was like your question had to be in the library of questions, right? And then you would get an answer. And so you'd be talking to something that's pretty, like, you're as far away from the Turing test as you could possibly conceive of being. But it was so cool. It was really neat. Be like, okay, now ask my little bot this question, and it would try and be like, I don't know what you're talking about, Dave. You get bad fast. My point in bringing that up is like, are we really at AI? Because now we're using interesting terms where we're like general AI, which is like AI sentient, and now it's autonomous and it's self-reflective and it can think. Or are we just in a really super slick, sophisticated model of what we were playing around with?
Yep.
Really just machine learning. And we're putting in these conditional if this happens, then do this. And like, so the LLMs are magnificent. They're amazing. And the amplification of productivity has just been incredible, truly. But if we think about what's really happening with those, the token is just searching for the very next word in the string. Right. It's like everything that came before me makes me, from a programmatic machine learning conditional standpoint, this is the very next word. I'm like, is that AI? So I want to answer your question. Like I do, we're in a bad like myth versus reality situation right now in the market where it's like everything's got an agent, which I love, but I feel like the faster we can move through like the hype zone of like, I've got AI, this has AI, and just be like, yeah, well, no, yeah, we should have agents. We should understand them, and we should know that like the distinction between what we're kind of working with there versus probably what's close, like what's probably closer on the corner with quantum computing, and then maybe something that looks a little bit closer to general AI. Like we are orders of magnitude away from what I would call like the AI that we're thinking of in Terminator. I do think it's probably closer than we think, but I guess for me, step one to your question, like to answer the question and form that complete argument, it's like, what is AI? We probably got to answer that question before we decide we're adopting it as an organization. I'll pause because I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about all that.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. I have a really hard time when people still call it AI, and I'm like, do you mean an LLM? Because if you mean an LLM, that's more like machine learning, and then you know that. So there's my my technical non what's what I'm looking for, where you you can agree with somebody else, non-conforming side, I guess, coming out, but. Yeah, the and my wife and I were just talking about this too, because she works in the medical field, and you know, with LLM usage there, specifically psychology. So with LLMs there, you know, can a language learning model like have empathy for another human being? So if it can't, then can it really do the job of like a psychologist who can, you know, feel empathy for something, for a client and help them through a problem? Um, I've also been working with a lot of LLM stuff on the back end recently, as in like this week and last week, and how much you have to tweak it, and how, you know, how you set up the knowledge base is so important and so hard to get it to where you want it to be. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, like the '90s internet that we all remember and love, right? Nostalgically, and then that being in the wild, wild west, that's still out. That information's still out there. So there's all this old, outdated information. So even if you build a great model, it still can pull from on the internet. So it gets the right things and the wrong things, and it mixes them together, and it hallucinates. Right? There's this new terminology coming out where it's like, oh, this thing's hallucinating, which is just
a great word.
Completely wrong information, right? It's like, if I were to dream a response to you, here's what my dream would be for you, you know. So lots of really interesting things happening there, and then you kind of go a little bit into like robotic process automation, right, where something's actually making a decision and doing something with that decision, right? So we would know it as a decision tree, right? You know, in classic computing, and it's funny. It's like every other buzzword, I feel like, that happens within cybersecurity, information technology, whatever you want to call it, where we've been doing it for years, and now there's a fancy new name for it, and also like RAG, you know, on the back end of AI,
right.
Using pull the information, like that's been around for a while. Like it's nothing new. How they're presenting it is new, right? And I remember kind of seeing Facebook for the first time in MySpace and being like, this is just a really pretty front end for a database. And
yeah, this is a really neat website creator.
ICQ.
Yeah. And so now we have these LLMs. And it's like, this is a really, like, this gives you paragraphs of answers from a Google search. You know, like, and I know I'm not trying to be reductive of what it is, because I understand it's come in leaps and bounds, right? But I think I saw something recently where it showed, you know, here's AI trying to play Super Mario Brothers, like the original Nintendo Super Mario Brothers, and it was like, die, jump, die, jump, die.
Just like it had to go. By the way.
Yeah, it had, just like us, except for I think we learned a little bit quicker, but it had to go through so many permutations before it actually got to like a solution. You know, it's not as sophisticated as the human brain, and we do see these, like, you know, kind of companies doing mass layoffs of people because it's like, well, we're just going to do stuff with AI. We've all seen the hallucinations that can happen, right? We've all seen the misinformation come out of that. I think there's, like you said, there's going to be a hype cycle, or we're in the hype cycle right now. There's going to be a very steep, like, you know, trough.
The pendulum swings back.
Yep. Whoa, let's pull back on this because we just had, you know, 10 things go wrong with a client because the AI said A, B, and C, right? Anyway, sorry, I'll digress.
I love that.
I think that's important, Dustin, because to get to Micah's point of wanting it to the hype cycle to be over, I think there's going to be a lot more blood in the streets before we start healing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because right now, there are tons of layoffs, and there's tons of changes in organizations with the expectation of AI is going to replace these people. And that's what's been very confusing for me, because at least in my experiences, AI doesn't replace anyone. AI enhances people. It makes, for example, it makes what I do, what Dustin do, and I'm sure what you do too, as well. It makes us more efficient. We can get things done quicker. This is a very minimal use of it, not the best use of its skills, but I love its spell check for me, and I love it. It's better than any spell check and grammar capability I've ever used. So like if we're talking about maybe taking out some jobs, look out writing centers at colleges, because now people can, you know, check their work better and quicker. But I think I think we'll get out of the hype cycle after you start to see more things. Like a great example, Lovable was in the news recently because they put out, it is a company that specifically people can use to help build apps quicker using AI, right? And what they were discovering is there was, it's to help you vibe code better, I guess. And what they were discovering is something that I know we'll all enjoy here, that yes, they made very functional apps that had absolutely no security on them. So everyone who was putting their information in the apps, it was unsecure, right? And so Lovable got in a lot of trouble for that because, well, they got a lot of media attention. The level of actual lovable trouble is to be determined, right? And yes, I did just say that like that, so I could say that. But I think I think it's going to take a few more incidents like that before the hype cycle starts to die down more. When everyone starts to realize, yes, this makes me more efficient, but doesn't necessarily replace people. I think that you'll see organizations shift from now, do I think there may be less hirings because of AI? Yes. But do I think the just swaths of firings are the right response? I think not. And I think that, we're an experiential species, right? We're going to learn the hard way. We usually do learn the hard way. And if we're lucky, we'll remember the hard way next time something comes around. Not have to do it the hard way, or at least inform the hard way. But one way or the other, I think it's going to be a little bit more of what you're seeing now till it affects the bottom line and companies realize, oh, I do need humans. So this whole idea that the first, what is it? They're going to have the first one-person billion-dollar company because it's going to be one really smart person with AI that's been popping up here and there. And I'm like, oh, I'll never say never, but I'll be incredibly surprised.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe in the year 2342 that'll happen because, inflation of funds or something, but where $1 trillion buys you a sandwich. We'll see. But I think that's what's going to have to happen in order for things to improve overall.
It's going to keep, man, so 2 years ago, there was this, I think it was Samsung. There was a couple of developers that just put a bunch of, so you've got the UI for the GPTs, the Claudes, the Geminis and whatever, but then you have an API that you can use when you're building stuff. And so they ended up dumping like millions of user records into their API bridge so that they could work on something. And they didn't really realize foundationally that everybody had access to that lake, essentially where that was going. And so if you queried that lake via API, you saw all these records. That was 2 years ago, man. And so I'm like, we're still experimenting with the ways that we can create disaster. And I think we're gonna see that for like the next 10 years probably with this stuff where it's like we're gonna see amazing amplifications. Like I'm pretty intrigued about the idea of like how material science and pharmaceuticals can be improved.
Yeah.
Just with the LLMs kind of pressure testing a lot of our positions on things about material science in particular, but I mean, we're going to see probably a lot of unnecessary leakage. And when you were talking about the hallucination, it just reminded me that like big retails have built in loss. People are going to walk out of the store without paying for things, and they just expect like 15% of the time that's going to happen. And they're like, can you imagine that we're going to have, exactly. We're going to have to do the same thing. It's like, look, like, it's not linear. 15% of the time, we need to expect that these things are going to lie to us. And you're like, that's kind of where it's at. We're like, the productivity is not, asymptotal, especially when these things have the capability of being super wrong. And I don't know, maybe that will force us because people are fallible, and we don't necessarily think about it that way. Like people are unintentionally not truthful, and we're not like this person. It's like that scene in Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey's talking to the robot, and he's like, "Tars, where's your honesty setting at?" It's like 100%. He's like, "You need to bring that down, man. Like, I'm in a life or death situation. I need you to bring that down. Let's go at like 80%." Those are the things that I think of when we're talking about it like that.
But isn't this interesting too? Like, and we brought it full circle because you just literally mentioned like several cybersecurity issues with AI and data stores and data lakes and like all these, like it's like we keep doing this where we keep creating all these new things. And don't get me wrong, innovation should not stop. But also we're still building upon all of these old infrastructures that are inherently not secure. They weren't designed to be secure because security wasn't in mind for them, right? Yeah. And so we have these, now we have this whole great new thing that is another security flaw, right? It happened with cloud adoption when that first happened. Everybody was just throwing things into S3 buckets without,
We're still having trouble with S3 buckets. What was it, a few months ago, where they were leaving them just out for anyone to get to? It was bananas.
We still haven't solved some like really, and don't get me wrong, the cloud has enabled the ability of AI to kind of progress to where it's at, or LLMs to progress where they're at. And we see, like, now we're even seeing, humongous companies like, I'll argue this for sure. Like, I really believe that Tesla is like a data company. Like, they have probably one of the biggest data stores on self-driving vehicles, right? So that's really where their worth is because they have they're not, the cars they're building, they're great cars, don't get me wrong. Crazy CEO aside, it's still what they're really doing is they're amassing this large collection of data, right? And so we see this shift now from, even 5 years ago, people making fun of cryptocurrency because what really is it? It's just a collection of bits and bytes, to now digital assets being like the main focus of what a company's worth is. And that's, that goes straight along with AI. It goes straight along with cloud. It goes straight along with kind of all emerging technologies. And then, of course, then it's our job to sit here and be like, okay, now here's how you secure all this stuff. And to me, it's funny because I feel like it's still the same not arguments, but same practices, the same controls we're kind of putting in place. Don't get me wrong, there are some new innovative controls, but they're kind of like just old controls packaged differently that you can kind of make yourself and kind of put into places. But anyway, sorry, I'm going on a rant now, but this is where I see this is where I see things going, where it's like, all right, we now have companies that are worth what they're worth because of the data that they hold, because of an intangible, an intangible grouping of ones and zeros that they hold. And then security that has to go around that now has to match it, right? And then they're like, okay, well, we can use AI to do security, right? Okay, now we've come full circle, right? Again.
Questions later.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll stop now and kind of let that.
Listen, don't apologize. So like you're right. One of my favorite authors, Graham Hancock, has this saying. He says, "We're a species with amnesia."
I love Graham Hancock. You like Graham Hancock?
Oh yeah, man.
Oh, dude! Someday we're gonna have a Dryas discussion, as it were.
Bring me back for part 2, and we'll talk about the Ice Age, man, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
No. This I can't get on camera and not talk about Graham Hancock, man. It makes my wife crazy, dude, because I'm like, I love my family. I would never leave them unless somebody showed up to my doorstep with a treasure map and was like, hey, I think I know where Atlantis is. Like, I need some help. And I'd be like, hey, I need 2 weeks. Knowing full well that it's not going to be 2 weeks. And I'm just, like, I love you all, but like that is my personal kind of passion. My little like pet passion freak, but he has this line. He says, "We're a species with amnesia," and I know in his context he means something different.
Yeah, 100%.
Context of what we're talking about, it's really true. These are the same things being packaged up and like creating these scalable commercial commodities that people can use. The reason why I think we're dealing with like the .com boom all over again, it is not because LLM is this generationally transformational technology. It's actually because we're having like a philosophical shift around what we're willing to tolerate. So, for instance, NVIDIA stock is skyrocketing because the LLM being commercially scalable, available, needs all of this infrastructure that before, like, we had this mass adoption, we didn't like really realize, like, okay, so it's an open secret. Microsoft's building like 500 data centers all around the world. And when I saw that article that said that they are going to bring 3 Mile Island back online, they are not just powering the data centers, they're also going to start like brokering power locally in the neighborhoods. And I was like, okay, we're actually, take the technology aside for a moment, we're moving into some pretty interesting places where the hyperscalers are going to start selling power back to us. And if you look in places where like California deals with the drought every single year, the environmentalists kind of like lobby is just like everything that's going on with Silicon Valley is awful. Suddenly, those same environmentalists and energy first companies are writing all of their copy for their newsletters with LLMs that are sucking the state dry. Do you know what I mean? I was like, wait, what's going on? Like, we need all this power. We've had this like massive green revolution for the past quarter century, and now we're just throwing that to the window because like, oh no, AI is great, we need it, and we're not shoot first, ask questions later. We're not actually. It's not just the cybersecurity consideration that we're thinking about. Like you see those posts where people are like, every time you generate an image with ChatGPT, you consume exactly. Right. And like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know if this is true. Holy smokes, is this true? Like, there's this like ethical consideration around being a global citizen that has just been completely thrown to the wind because we're like, these things are cool and in our hands, and now they're on our phone. We don't even know how they work, but they're like, I can make an action figure in bubble wrap, and like, I totally need to do that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a very fine line between like progress and innovation and hypernormalization now, where it's like you don't want hypernormalization, but things are going to progress regardless. So there are just things that are going to happen and new norms. All these terminologies we heard during the pandemic, where it was like, the world's going to change, and this is the new norm, and that was out of like a really quick necessity that humanity kind of went through to have to make those changes. But now you're absolutely right. We're seeing it in the digital world too, where it's like, okay, like look at all the power. Blockchain had the same issue, right? Look at all the power you guys are sucking in order to do one.
Oh yeah, and everyone hated it with blockchain.
It was crazy, right? And now it's like, what's the thing I read recently? It's like GPT is losing millions of dollars a day by being polite, by using words like please and thank you. Like it's just those words alone in trying to do the processing power to like be polite to people. It's crazy. And so you're right. There's this balance being struck. Like we don't want to stop innovation. We don't want to stop progress from happening. But we also don't want to lose our standards for everything, and to not get political. Like again, hypernormalization is kind of seeping in, right? Where it's like this is the new norm now, so this is okay, and it just seems like it keeps stepping up and stepping up. For some reason, blockchain did give up, like Ethereum stopped doing the way that they were doing computations to save energy. AI, they're complaining about it, and I haven't seen it yet.
Blockchain crawled so AI could run, right?
Yeah,
there you go.
That's pretty much what happened.
Yeah,
man, that's so sad. I mean, my kid, he's 8. I have 2 boys. My 8-year-old is like asks a million questions like 8-year-olds do, and he was like, he's not supposed to download apps on his tablet. He's got a new one. I haven't locked it down or anything, so he downloaded ChatGPT, and I was like, dude, like, I don't think I'm going to take that away from him. I'm going to let him contribute to this problem in his own way. Like, go, do your thing. And he was like, Dad, what does GPT stand for? And I was like, it stands for generative pretext. And he's like, well, what does that mean? It would be like him asking me, like, how does DHCP work? It's like, dude, it's just Wi-Fi. Don't worry about it. Like, do you know what I mean? But I'm like, well, you are actually asking the right questions, but you asked that question, and now we got to ask like 10 more questions. We got to talk about the implications of all of this. And you're going to get to the point you were making, which is like, if I'm polite with the LLM, I'm going to create this additional consumption, but I'm super polite. It's not because I want the Terminators to remember that I was nice to them. It's not that.
That's why I do it.
That's exactly why my wife does it. She goes, I don't care. I'm still going to be polite.
I tell my wife this. Like, she hates like bugs in the house, and I'm like, take the bug outside. Do not kill them, because in heaven, they're all going to be there waiting for you. And you get to the pearly gates, like, you're going to see a mountain of spiders that you flushed instead of took outside, and I am going to let them have at you, right? Like,
I love it.
Be nice. I don't want to create a situation where our default communication paradigm is to just be assholes to the programming, because that will inevitably just trickle into like we're super blunt, curt, short with each other. we already struggle with this in our digital communication and our interaction, where like
Absolutely.
the sellers reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, I need this," and I'm like, "Good morning, so and so. How was your weekend? How are you doing?" Like, there's a bare minimum of kind of etiquette that I'm not just input output. Like, don't treat me like that. And I most like, I know they're busy, and I mostly just do it to be kind of funny, but I'm also just politely reminding them, like, I am whole human that actually likes Graham Hancock and all this other stuff, and MMA. I don't like, ask me about me for a second, and then let's get into it. So I've noticed that the LLMs do, in fact, start to reflect that back to you. And I know, like, it's not voodoo, it's not magic. It's just it's the LLM is responding to your communication paradigm, and it's going to end up in all of your copy. It's going to end up in your output. It's going to end up in your result. It's like, do you really want that? Like, I don't.
Well, this has been fantastic, and we've held you for 45 minutes. And so we would love to have you back. Thank you so much, Micah, for coming. This has been one of the more enjoyable discussions we've had in a while. If anyone would like to reach out to
Frank, and we don't really like talking to each other that much.
It's funny, before you close out, Frank, I do have to say, I didn't realize I recognized Dustin until you started talking about, like, bringing this podcast back, and I was like, holy smokes, that's where I know Dustin from. And I went and found, I'm very rarely on X.
That's right. You did. I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. I went all the way back, like, I think it was 2001. And I was like, holy smokes, that's Dustin. I did know that guy. And I remembered that conversation you guys had, which is like, that whole conversation was so fun and funny and just sad at the same time, which was about, like, does cybersecurity really matter? Like, that was the premise of that podcast. And
jury's still out, by the way.
Yeah, we don't know. We still don't know. That's why we had to start the podcast.
Great. Like, we need more of this. And the fact that you're coming back, it's like Gandalf. I come back to you now at the turn of the tide. I'm glad that you are.
That was Dustin and Frank the Gray. This is Dustin and Frank the White.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, there is a little more white around the sideburns. Well, thank you so much. That's very kind, Micah. I do really appreciate that. Yeah. And to everyone, if you're looking for Micah or you want to pick his brain more, he's available on LinkedIn, and we will share any of the contact information he gives us in the show notes as well. Once again, thank you, Micah, and thank you everyone for listening. And we'll see you maybe next week. Maybe next month. We don't know. We still haven't decided what this is. So
I love it.
Keep enjoying the ride.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Micah.